to being able to?
When I was in college, and 20 years old, I could wear a two-piece bathing suit, and I couldn't do that now. The tumors started to become visible in my mid-20s, and they've increased in size and number.
Can you talk to us about some of your intimate relationships and what it's been like to have NF in those when you were younger and now when you're...
Oh, I had boyfriends, and when I was in high school, I had a nice boyfriend whose mother interfered with things. We were going to get married, which we never told anybody. We were going to finish college and then we'd get married, but then he went into the service, and then his mother used to call my mother and ask me not to accept all the dates he asked me on when he came home, and it got to be too much. And I didn't consider it a Dear John letter, but he did. And then later in life, I was engaged. But we just agreed to disagree and didn't get married.
So it sounds like people who have NF have both physical pain and a pain associated with isolation from society.
You learn to live with the pain. You don't dwell on it. It's not always easy. It hurts to be hugged. A light hug is okay, but a real good squeeze hurts. It's not very nice.
Do you find it easy, as you get on in years doing this, to look straight at a person who looks like that without shuddering or lowering your eyes?
Oh, sure.
Sure.
Oh, yes. I mean, it's part of what goes into your training, but it's also part of what comes out of your soul. You connect with the person regardless of what's wrong, and your willingness to do so sustains her willingness to be there. You could turn her off. As willing and generous as she is, she could, I think, be turned off. But if you look at her, you just are doing something together.
Is there not some other place we can do this? It seems a little awkward in a lecture hall.
But as you'll see, in this class, what starts together almost comes apart.
See what it is.
We'll be right back.
Is there...
Do you ever feel just completely overwhelmed by it?
I don't think so.
Back at Harvard Medical School, the subject is neurofibromatosis, NF, and the first-year class is learning about this disease by listening.
Which is exactly what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to become more aware of other people's culture and their disease and their disfigurements, and not judge them initially, but to find out who they are and what their story is, and then work from there.
Can you tell us what your most enjoyable experience has been as a result of having NF?
Yes, when I was working at Mass General, I went into the pediatric office one day, and there was a little boy playing with something on the floor. And I asked him what he was doing, and he told me, but I couldn't understand him. I asked him again, and I still didn't understand him. And his father said he's fertilizing his garden. So I got down on eye level with him and talked about his garden, and then he looked at me and he said, "What's that all over your face?" And I said, "Well, when I was made, something inside went wrong, and that's why I'm so lumpy and bumpy." And he looked at me right in the eye and he said, "I like your face." You made my day. He really did. And then on the other side of the coin, I was down in the Sandblast Islands one time, just this side of the Panama Canal, and there were two little kids who looked at me. I terrorized them just looking at me. Their eyes filled with tears, and one ran into a little house and the other threw his arms around his mother's legs. They just looked at me and were scared, and that hurt.
The curriculum at Harvard Medical School is not lecture after lecture about anatomy and genetics and so on. The school noticed a while ago that its students, like these students here, arrive full of compassion and enthusiasm. But then, says Dean Fetterman,
there is something about medical education and something about what the students go through which blunts this empathy with which they arrive. Some people refer to it as a dehumanization, which I think is too strong, but it conjures up what we're worried about.
That is why Porter Colley is invited back every year. She's done this 15 times.
Hello, Mr. Ortiz. I'm John Lamatina. I'll be your doctor.
That is why most classes here are small and intimate, with problem solving and role playing.
Is it getting worse while you're sitting here talking to me, or is it pretty much staying the same?
It's still really bad.
Learning how to listen and touch. Fetterman tells the students, you know what they say about doctors.
Am I touching where it is right now?
Yeah.
Doctors don't listen, they don't give us enough time, they don't explain well. Those are the three biggest complaints.
And so the school concentrates on listening, taking time, and explaining, as Porter tells them.
And we want to be treated like human beings. We're not unit numbers. At that NF case down the hall, we have names. And touch is very important. You have to be careful, I know, these days about touching. But a light touch helps. Just hold somebody's hand. It means a lot.
You talked to me a little bit about your thoughts about having children yourself.
When I was young, I thought if I became pregnant, excuse me, I would abort. But if I got pregnant now, I wouldn't. If I got pregnant now, the SAR would write me.
She says that will get her in the tabloids.
I'm not sorry I was born. I've had a good life, even with all these problems.
I'm afraid that we're out of time right now.
So Porter is done. And now it's time for what Porter calls her hands-on inspection. The students are invited down to the front. We brought our cameras around to the back. And as you'll see, these pictures are being taken by the Harvard camera, but our cameras, you'll see, are big and intrusive. There's one down on the left and the other's over on the right, kind of leering in at her. Porter didn't mind.
I've done this for a long time.